I've got a new favourite image and I'm surprised. In this video I wanted to talk about the image, tell you what it is I like about it, how I processed it, and of course why I'm surprised about it. Hi everyone, thanks for joining me. In this video I actually want to talk about the image that I took in my last video, and it's this image. Now this image has become a favourite of mine. It's certainly my favourite image that I've taken in the last few months, and it's definitely one of my favourites of all time. But that's actually come as a bit of a surprise to me, because I've got to be honest, I didn't expect to get an image that I liked that much on that particular trip. So in this video, what I was going to do was talk about the image, what it is I like about it. I thought I'd show you the processing that I did, and I also wanted to just talk a little bit about why it was such a surprise to me, and I think maybe that's the biggest lesson from this particular trip and this particular image. So I hope you'll enjoy it. I'll just take a second to say, if you're new to the channel and you enjoy this, and you maybe go and check out some of my other work, but please consider subscribing. I've got new videos coming out twice a week, so there's plenty to check out. And of course, if you're already a subscriber to my channel, then thank you very much, I appreciate that. Okay, so this is the image, and let me tell you what it is I like about it. First of all, the composition is actually pretty simple. There's not a lot of excess detail in there. There's very little in the way of distractions. We've got the big shape of the hill in the background with its sort of rocky, craggy shape, and the last light just sitting along one edge of it. And we've also got the light just kissing the top of the other hill on the right hand side of the frame. I shot this with a telephoto lens, 70mm, and that's enabled me to cut out a lot of distracting foreground elements, because between me and this scene there was a lot of tufts of grass and bushes and other distractions, and I've just been able to close it into that little hill in the foreground with those trees on. Now at 70mm you kind of get that compressed perspective effect, but it's not total, so there's still a sense of depth, and that hill with those little trees creates a nice anchor, a nice lead into the scene. There's some beautiful reflected tones in the water of the lake, and of course there's some lovely tones and textures and patterns in the rocks around the edge of the lake. The blue sky actually doesn't distract the eye from the rest of the image, and we've got that warm band kind of across the middle in that gap down there, which I guess is, you know, the last of the light, and we're getting a bit of earth shadow perhaps going on, although normally you only see earth shadow around the horizon, but certainly that's part of the effect. So all in all, I actually really like this image. So for the most part, the processing on this image was minimal, although there was one extra step that I did, which I'll talk about in a second. But I thought I'd just show you the basic processing. So let's jump over into Lightroom and have a quick look at the raw file and what I did to it. Okay, so here is the raw file in Lightroom, and the only thing that I've done to it is my lens corrections. So if I look, the histogram's a good histogram, it's spread nicely across, it's got quite a lot of contrast in it already, but there's no blown highlights, no clipped shadows, which is good news. But the image does look very blue at the moment, and that's because of the blue colour cast from the Lee Big Stopper, the 10-stop filter, and that's normally corrected using white balance. Now I actually have a preset which I have carefully calculated to exactly correct the colour cast from my Big Stopper. So if I click on that, and you can see there it's changed my white balance quite a lot, but that corrects the tones exactly as I need it to. So what else does this image need? Well, the sky is very bright, the highlights are very bright, so I'm going to pull those all the way down. I've got a lot of very dark shadows in here, so I'm going to pull those up a long way. Probably up to about there. And that's obviously knocked a bit of contrast out of the scene, but I'm going to add contrast back in now with my white and black points. So I'm just going to put a bit of, let's bring the white point up a bit and then bring the black point down a bit. I'm just keeping an eye on my histogram to make sure that I'm not clipping anything. So about there. And this is actually quite a colourful scene, so I think it can stand having the vibrance boosted quite a lot. So I'm going to take the vibrance up a long way. Normally with vibrance I would normally stop somewhere around the 30 to 40 mark as a maximum, but just occasionally you get a scene like this and I think it can take more, so I'm going to push that all the way up about there. And that's making the colours pop nicely. I'm leaving the saturation alone. Sometimes I'll add a touch of saturation, but I've put so much vibrance in, I don't think the saturation needs anything doing to it. The sky looks pretty bright at the moment, and we could do with a bit more contrast between the sky, between the blue sky, the warm tones here, and the rocks as well. So I am going to use the HSL sliders, and all I'm going to do is bring down the aqua just a little bit, up there probably, and blue maybe just a little bit more, and about there, too much, about there probably, yeah, that looks about right. You have to be careful with these sliders because you can, if you sort of darken one colour too much and it's contrasting with another colour nearby, you can get some nasty fringing around it, but that's a nice clean one. So in terms of the basic processing, that's the image done, but I will confess there was one extra step that I did here. There were a couple of elements that I found a little bit distracting in the scene. The first one was this tree, or the top of this tree and this bush just here, which I felt looked a bit messy. And the other thing is this sort of patch of bare ground just here, which I also didn't really like the looks of. And after much deliberation I decided I would take the image into Photoshop, and I actually spent quite a bit of time cloning those out to make them look good. I'm not going to show you that because it would end up being a very long video and I might struggle to do it again. It took me quite a long time the first time. But I felt that the image was worth spending that time on, and yeah, I know I'm removing elements from a scene, it's kind of cheating, but I felt it was justified in order to make this image look as good as it possibly can. So here's the final image. Okay, so I said that I was really surprised that I got an image that I liked this much. And I need to explain that, I guess. Normally, when I go out, I want clouds. If you've watched my videos, you'll know that I'm not a big fan of blue sky days. They tend not to be overly inspiring. And on this particular day, when I went out, it was a blue sky day. There were a few wispy clouds early on, but hardly anything, and they wouldn't have looked good in an image anyway. And by the time we got to anywhere near sunset, they were gone. So it was a blue sky day, which generally leads me to think I'm not going to get my best images, because typically clouds make a landscape image. Also, because I was shooting over or near to a lake, as a general rule, I'm normally looking for really still, calm conditions to pull out nice, clean reflections. And I didn't get that. There were ripples running across the lake. So I didn't really expect to get a really nice reflection shot, because a reflection shot sometimes doesn't need the clouds to make it interesting. So on this particular trip out, I had blue skies, which generally aren't great, and I was shooting around a lake with conditions that were not windy, but just a fraction too breezy to have nice, still, calm water for really great reflections. So I was thinking I was going to get an okay image, something that would be nice, but certainly not necessarily something that was going to make it into my favourites. But here's the thing. This image works because there aren't any clouds. If there were clouds in that blue sky, it would actually distract the eye from the rest of the scene. And likewise, the fact that there are no clean reflections in the water, but there's some nice patterns which were created by using an ND filter to get a 1 minute exposure, which has smoothed the water movement out and created some swirling patterns. And there is, of course, reflections of the sort of rocky hills and cliffs in there, but they're not clean, they're blurred. And that actually works as well, because I think if there were nice, clean, clear reflections in there, it wouldn't work as well. It would actually distract from the rest of the scene. So despite my expectations that a blue sky day couldn't create a favourite image, and that I was unlikely to get a favourite image around a lake when there was too much breeze for clean reflections, those conditions actually worked to create this image, which, as I've said, is certainly my favourite image of the last few months and in amongst my favourites that I've ever taken. And that's perhaps an important lesson here. So often it's easy to be put off by conditions that don't seem as if they are going to let you get the kind of image that you want to get. That it's worth going out anyway, because you never know if you're going to be able to find something which absolutely works at its best in the conditions that you've got on that particular day. So whether it's blue skies, wind, cloud, grey skies, rain, whatever it might be, there is a scene out there that will work at its best in whatever conditions you've got. So it's worth going out and trying to get it. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video and this little insight into what it is I like about this image and how the experience of this image has affected my thinking about going out. As always, I appreciate you taking the time to watch, and don't forget about that subscribe button if you're not a subscriber. Likes and shares, of course, very much appreciated, and I love to hear from you. Comments down below. Thank you very much for watching, and until the next video, bye.